The Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared a three-day ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war that is set to begin on the midnight of 8th of May and will run through 10th of May. It is coinciding with Russia's Victory Day celebrations that will take place on the 9th of May. It will commemorate the end of the Second World War. It's the 80th celebration of the end of the World War II. Kremlin says it expects Kyiv to also honor the ceasefire, warning that any violations will be met with a swift response. Moscow also reiterated its call for an unconditional peace talks, claiming it's ready to address the root cause of the conflict and engage in meaningful international dialogue. Now, what does this mean? Why is this significant? Of course, the Victory Day celebration is about Vladimir Putin meeting heads of state. There are about 20 of them that are being invited for this celebration, and which is why this ceasefire is being announced. Tatiana, who's a senior journalist, joins me from Moscow. Romeo Kabir, who's he's the managing editor of the new Ukraine Voice, joins me live from Kyiv. Tatiana, to you first. The fact that it coincides with the Victory Day celebrations is indicative that Mr. Putin does understand how important it is to have the right optics in front of the world, doesn't it?
Well, Gaurie, let me correct you first. You know, it's our little habit that we have, right? The Victory Day celebrations is actually not about Vladimir Putin meeting heads of state. It's about honoring the millions, the victims lost in this terrible war, and honoring the sacrifice of all of the nations that were involved in it, including Ukraine, which was then part of the Soviet Union, and Ukrainian soldiers fought and lost lives in this war alongside Russian soldiers against Nazi Germany. So it is first and foremost about that.
No, it is about just that. It is actually just about that. But the fact is there are about a dozen heads of states and leaders from the world who've been invited to be part of that Victory Day celebration, which is why, to get the global optics right, the ceasefire makes sense. That's what I'm asking.
Well, you know, again, as cynical as we can get, I believe that the ceasefire still, first and foremost, makes sense as chance for Ukrainians to also celebrate this day of great sacrifice. Ukraine, as you know, suffered a lot during the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union. And again, however you might want to spin it, first and foremost, it is about people being able to honor the sacrifice of their, their ancestors.
Yes, that's correct. Let me now quickly get in a voice from Kyiv as well. In fact, Mr. Kabir joins me to talk more on this. Mr. Kabir, this comes at a time when there have been several calls in the past about a ceasefire that was on the table, but the talks didn't proceed further. Do you think this offers that window for a larger conversation around peace talks, or do you think it's just because of, as I said, getting the right optics? Mr. Kabir.
It's purely for optics. I mean, let's be honest. Tatiana can act as if she doesn't want to be cynical, but her nation is engaged in a fascist genocidal war against mine. There is nothing but optics to gain for Vladimir Putin, who is a murderous dictator. As Tatiana well knows, she is under no illusions, as much as she might like to deny it, about the reality of the situation that she lives in and the reality of the war that her government is waging against mine. There was never going to be any shot of peace as long as Vladimir Putin keeps on his murderous rampage throughout Ukraine. He has, as he has had from day one, from 2014, the immense power to end all conflict and fighting in Ukraine by the simple measure of removing all Russian uniformed soldiers from Ukrainian territory. That's it. That's all he has to do. And he has been able to do that since the first day. Tatiana knows that, you know that, I know that, the world knows that.
Right.
So there's no reason to pretend that all of this pablum and nonsense about some kind of sacrifice, shared sacrifice of brotherhood, means anything, when the Russians have openly and repeatedly called the extermination of Ukrainian identity.
Okay. Tatiana, I give you a chance to respond to that.
Gaurie, I would like to actually respond to any questions that you might have.
Okay,
because
fair enough. Then let me ask you. Okay, that's a very matured way of handling it, and I commend you for that.
Okay.
Let me then ask you another question, which is that this comes just a few days after President Trump had in fact said on social media, and he had called out saying, "Vladimir, stop." That's what the message was, and also comes just days after President Putin met President Zelensky as well, on the whole possibility of the peace talks being on and off the table. Do you think that window of opportunity comes in now after this?
Gaurie, I think that right now, right this moment, we are not at a point where Ukraine is ready to negotiate. Unfortunately, Vladimir Putin has said multiple times that Moscow is ready to talk. Moscow is ready to negotiate, and but only in a situation when we're actually talking about something. Again, something adequate, because Ukraine keeps insisting, for instance, that we need to, that Russia will have to actually give back Crimea and things like that. That will never actually happen. So, and Vladimir Zelensky has just reiterated that he does not want to, under any circumstances, recognize Crimea as Russian territory. So unless this changes, I don't believe personally, again,
so
not even as a journalist, as a person, that we're at a point where any talks can result in anything.
Because there are too many deal breakers that are there. Okay, very quickly, Mr. Kabir, I'm running out of time, which is that how do you see this? After the 3-day window is over, do you think it's going to be back to fighting, or any possibility of this leading to some peace talks?
There's not even going to be a 3-day window. Russia will continue its attacks even during their declared truces and ceasefires, just like they have every other time they have declared any truce or ceasefire. Hell, they've declared humanitarian corridors where they then bombed fleeing evacuees. So, no, the Russians are not going to stop. Vladimir Putin has no intention of stopping.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. Ms. Tatiana and Mr. Kabir, thank you so much for joining me, essentially representing the two sides of this debate, which are unlikely to come together on any single issue right now.